Welcome to this Tutor to You Sociology topic video on theory and methods, looking at the theoretical approach of functionalism. For those who studied some sociology, functionalism is one of the key theoretical approaches that is discussed on the A-Level specification. But what are the key concepts of functionalism, and what are the key contributions of functionalism to our understanding of society? Functionalism is a structural consensus theory, one that believes that social institutions such as education, media, family and religion shape the behaviour of individuals in society through passing on society's norms and values. They suggest that in doing so, this makes society more harmonious, as everybody is aware of the shared norms and values of society, or what we call the value consensus, and subscribes to society's moral codes, or the collective conscience. In return for conformity, social institutions ensure that the members of society have their basic needs or functional prerequisites met. Food, shelter, emotional support, education and the ability to fulfil their own potential. Functionalism has been discussed throughout the specification in education, crime, family, beliefs and many other areas. It is generally considered to be quite a conservative approach that looks to maintain the status quo. However, some theorists in the functionalist tradition focus more on the gradual evolution of society in response to significant social changes. Some of the key sociologists that follow in the functionalist tradition we have seen across the specification, namely Emil Durkheim, Parsons and Robert K. Merton. And in this video we will explore their ideas a little more and look at some of the applications of their ideas to contemporary society. Durkheim we've come across in education with his ideas on the teaching of specialist skills and social solidarity. In crime, Durkheim looked at some of the positive functions that crime performs for society, such as boundary maintenance and the adaptation to social changes, while we've also encountered Durkheim in beliefs on his work on positivist methodology. Parsons is another functionalist whose work we have revisited several times. In education, looking at concepts of the universal and particularistic standards, ascribed and achieved status, the functions of family and the evolution of the nuclear family as a response to industrialisation. He also wrote on issues of health, global development and social stratification amongst others. Finally, we will look at Robert K. Merton, whose strain theory explained the reason people turn to crime as a reaction to society's unequal structure. Merton is unlike other functionalists and even criticised the likes of Parsons for ignoring dysfunction in society in what is referred to as Merton's internal critique of functionalism. There are other functionalists that you could study, Davis and Moore and their work on education and stratification, or earlier theorists such as Auguste Comte and Herbert Spencer who helped define the functionalist approach to studying social behaviours. The first functionalist we will look at though is Emil Durkheim, who advanced the idea of the scientific study of society, forming some of the foundations for sociology by using positivist methodology. Durkheim was writing at a time of great social change and suggested that by directly observing measurable social behaviours, what he called social facts, that sociologists could understand what the impacts of social changes such as industrialisation and urbanisation would be. Durkheim also suggested some of the key tenets of functionalism, that social order could be maintained through conformity and similarity in society, offering structural explanations for social behaviours. He also suggested that social order could be maintained through strengthening the social bonds or social cohesion between people, suggesting that the mechanical solidarity of the past was now more organic and needed to be manipulated by institutions such as education and religion, and that this would maintain the equilibrium in society. But Durkheim also acknowledged change in society, particularly through deviance. By rejecting norms and values, deviant behaviours drove society forwards, as evidenced by his ideas on the adaptation to deviant behaviours. Many of Durkheim's ideas remain incredibly relevant to contemporary society, particularly concepts such as boundary maintenance, which can be witnessed in the aftermath of terrorist acts, as society comes together to condemn the acts and reaffirm their commitment to society's norms and values. The second key functionalist is Parsons. We've discussed Parsons' ideas before and seen a lot of Parsons' ideas throughout the specification, but one of his lasting contributions to functionalism and sociology is his description of how society works as a system of interconnected institutions that fulfil the functional prerequisites of society. Parsons suggests that social institutions fulfil four functional prerequisites. Firstly, goal attainment. In a complex modern society, resources need to be organised so that they can reach those that need them the most, and often this is the function of politicians, ensuring that the needs of the many are met. The second functional prerequisite is adaptation, which Parsons saw as the ability for the economy to provide for the material needs of the population through providing meaningful employment and controlling the prices of resources by ensuring there is adequate supply. A third function is integration. This is how the population comes to understand the norms and values of society, which are usually transmitted through education, family, religion, and media. We can see this through the study of education, passing on the value consensus and ensuring social solidarity in society. The final functional prerequisite is latency, and that's separated into two sub-processes. Firstly, pattern maintenance, which prepares people for their future roles in society and promotes ideals such as meritocracy. And secondly, tension management, the ability to release tensions. And if we think back to Parsons' idea of the stabilisation of adult personalities, or Davis and Polsky and the role of prostitution and pornography in deviance, we can see evidence of their functionality in Parsons' system. Parsons' argument states that social changes in one part of the system will inevitably lead to changes in other sections of society, or what he referred to as universal functionalism. For example, if politicians introduce a new initiative, such as British values, this then leads to further changes across society, with funds being allocated to schools and media promoting these values, and a general acceptance of those changes in wider society. However, Parsons' system has come under heavy criticism from another functionalist, Robert K. Merton. Merton's view is often described as the internal critique of functionalism, in part because Merton identified with some of the core concepts of functionalism. Merton was a student of Parsons at Harvard, but was also inspired by the ideas of Max Weber, which marks him out as being somewhat different to other functionalists. He criticised the concept of universal functionalism as he suggested that functionalists such as Parsons ignored the dysfunction in society. Merton's own strain theory suggested that there was structural inequality in society which was the root of criminal behaviour. While functionalists see inequality as inevitable, Merton saw this as a sign of a dysfunctional society rather than a healthy one. He also criticised Parsons' ideas of social institutions being interconnected, suggesting that instead social institutions had functional autonomy. Just because attitudes to religion changed, it did not necessarily mean that attitudes to education would, for example. Merton also suggested that social institutions were not irreplaceable in the way that Parsons had suggested in his biological analogy. Family, religion and education were not indispensable to Merton, and to a certain extent time has proved Merton correct, with variations on family life, increased secularisation and homeschooling all proving his point. Merton, whilst nominally a functionalist, often seems to contradict the ideas of Parsons, who suggested a functional utopia based on the harmonious interconnection of social institutions, whereas Merton sees society as being slightly more dysfunctional. Other criticisms of the functionalist approach focus on its teleological nature. Parsons explained the existence of social institutions based upon their functions, and this suggests that the effect is present before the cause. Rather than looking to prove a hypothesis that explains social behaviours, functionalists are working backwards and finding explanations for something that has already happened. For example, Durkheim approached suicide based upon the effects, that is, the act of suicide, and not the cause. Durkheim's assertions that integration and regulation were responsible for suicide are not falsifiable, and this makes them unscientific. Had Durkheim have identified the causes first, then measured the effects, this would have been more scientific. However, using that example, it would have been also highly unethical. Functionalism is also seen as being highly deterministic, assuming that human behaviour is stable and that people will react in similar ways to the pressures of external forces. In an age of late modernity and people reflecting upon their actions, can we say that this is still the case? And finally, it ignores much of the conflict in society. While it suggests that norms and values keep society in equilibrium, it doesn't answer the question of whose norms and values are being acknowledged. Of course, Marxists would suggest that norms and values are of the capitalist elite, while feminists would suggest they serve the needs of men. However, functionalism has made significant contributions to our understanding of society. It was the first grand narrative, an attempt to understand and observe human behaviour in a scientific manner in order to change society for the better. It still has relevance in contemporary society, with concepts such as boundary maintenance and social solidarity having utility in contemporary society. It also advanced the study of society by using positivist methodologies to observe social facts. It's not an overreaction to state without the likes of Durkheim and Spencer, sociology wouldn't have developed into a scientific discipline in the social sciences. And finally, whilst it may be seen as outdated and based upon Western norms of 1950s America, it still has an influence in the new right, through the ideologies of right realism and neoconservatism. While it may be unfashionable and inflexible, functionalism has contributed greater understanding of the roles of the family, education, media, religion and crime to our overall understanding of society. That concludes this Tutor to You Sociology topic video on theory and methods, focusing on functionalism. Thanks for watching.